Abigail here with the astrology and tarot for this new moon in Pisces. This is on the 18th of March at 8:23 p.m. EST, CST. So that would be 9:23 p.m. EST. Always have to remember what time zone I'm in since I've moved. But this is something I've really been looking forward to. It's also the start of several moons that have really great rulership. So this one is ruled by a direct Jupiter in Cancer. This is an exalted Jupiter. It is still at its station degree, but we are now moving forward. So there's a really lovely sense of new motion forward, abundance, a fresh sense of luck coming in. And, just kind of stick a pin in it, we have a Libra full moon that'll be ruled by a Taurus Venus, which will be chef's kiss. We will also have a new moon in Aries that is going to be ruled by Mars in Aries. So this is some really nice astrology, especially considering kind of what went on earlier this year. And I know it's only March, but it feels like we're in like the third year of 2026. Anyways, so this is a really beautiful moment of beginnings. It's also interesting because it's an ending in a sense as well. Partially because this is the end of the zodiacal year. This is the end of the year that started back at the spring equinox last year, which was also kind of nuts because that was between eclipses. We had the Venus retrograde, the Mercury retrograde. All of the planets were starting their shift into different signs. And while we still have Uranus to go into Gemini, the other planets have moved. Neptune and Saturn are already in Aries. And so there is this sense of like beginnings and endings converging on each other. And excuse me, that's what I get for recording in the morning. Beginnings and endings converging on each other and something really dynamic and fresh starting. But there's a sense of kind of unusual, innovative energy because this is also directly sextile Uranus and Taurus. And this is the last kind of sextile and lunation we're going to have that involves this Uranus and Taurus. So it's a really pivotal moment. This is the ending of the 7-year cycle. This is the ending of the Zodiac year. This is also the official ending of eclipse season. This is the kind of official ending of the Jupiter retrograde. And also it's a fresh start. It's a refresh and a beginning for us. And it honestly feels pretty magical. If you do ritual work, I really encourage you to do manifestation ritual during this time. I do a lot of ritual work during eclipse season, but it is all releasing, cutting, severing, unbinding, letting go energy. This is the time to call in new things. This is the time to call in new connections and care. I would suggest saving love manifestations for that full moon in Libra because that's going to be really good for that. I mean, yeah, it is going to be square Jupiter, but sometimes sometimes that has a magic of its own. And interestingly enough, during this lunation, while it's not connected by sign or by degree, we have a square with Venus and Jupiter functioning in this moment. So that definitely feels as though something about this new moon is going to have a lot to say about that next full moon, even though they're not associated by sign. So log that away. That's kind of my ADHD brain and my autism brain searching for other information out in the cosmos. So focus, my kind of thing for you is, unless it falls in a very specific part of your chart that is, related to relationships, focus more on this as a moment to manifest kind of general good and luck, to right certain wrongs, to adjust anything that kind of felt like it got kind of wonkified during these eclipses. This is also the last eclipse that we're going to have while the nodes are in Virgo and Pisces. And the North node that this is associated with also has the not quite yet direct Mercury conjunct it. So while this is really good for calling in things and manifesting things, this is also a bit of having to face stuff having to face the things that we know and that we need to change in order to move forward. This would also be a good moment to manifest energetic help in something that we are struggling to overcome, in something that is holding us back, that is keeping us from progress. I will say, watch it. If you aren't ready to let something go and you manifest during this moment and that thing is already kind of on its way out, those manifestations will end it. Relationship, job, whatever. So just be aware when you manifest what you might be releasing. Like I said, whatever goes will be going anyways, but it'll go a little faster and will clear the way for new and better connections and better care. You know, Jupiter in Cancer is about care, it's about connection, it's about, you know, finding abundance through reciprocation and interdependence. Because, you know, if you think about Cancer as the ocean, as the tides, it is both violent and incredibly life giving and essential to life. And so, you know, this is about our connection and our care. It's also about how our luck and our situation, our choices, ping pong off of other people and have an effect. I know you can't sit here and, you know, mastermind like what all of your decisions are going to do to others, but it is a reminder that we do not live alone, and we do not, even if we live in a space by ourselves, we are not alone. We live with the objects that we exist with, we live with spirit, we live around some form of neighbor, unless you are real isolated. And even then, you have neighbors that are animals and plants and trees and rivers. And so, yeah, it's a really beautiful time to kind of take stock and call in what we want moving forward. Also, like I said, this is a new moon, so we can call things in, but it's also a moment of ending because we're like the very next day we go into the spring equinox. And so this is also a kind of a bittersweet moment to say, hey, I'm opening myself up to new things by releasing stuff that the eclipses have shaken loose, by releasing things that Mercury retrograde has been kind of pointing a neon sign to as it's over, it's done, it's finished, or in the very least needs to be redone and reworked and reimagined in order to have, you know, progress and shifts and changes and benefits going forward. So a very simple and yet deeply complex lunar moment. Um, like I said, I encourage you to do your manifestations. How I see this is anytime after the peak of this moon is a good time. Kind of how new moons work is new moons build to a full moon, and that's kind of the most progressive time in the moon cycle is when the moon is waxing. So anytime after the moon peaks is a good time to do ritual, even after a couple of days. And with full moons, I always say it's better to do your ritual a little bit before the full moon. These are very small energetic tweaks, but I find them to be true. So just a little heads up, you know, either do something Tuesday evening. Is it Tuesday? No, Wednesday evening. Am I insane? I am. Thursday evening. Let's just go through every day of the week. Thursday evening into Saturday, into like Saturday, Sunday, totally a great time to do your workings. So yeah, this does feel like a bit of a shift in the story of 2026. It does feel like we're going to be getting slowly but surely some of our oomph back. Does it change the fact that the world is on fire quite literally? No. But this is a moment to pull in hope, to manifest success, to do workings for things that are anti-war. Uranus is associated a lot with war because through war we often force innovation. That doesn't necessarily have to be the way. And so in this moment, let's also reimagine the possibilities of the world that we live in. So yeah, manifest, engage. Um, Dancing is not a bad thing to do. Doing a foot bath or a foot massage would be good. You know, Pisces rules the feet. really pulling in all of these little magical tips and tricks to kind of shift the tides. I do think we're not going to see a full shift until we kind of get into Taurus season, because we do have to experience that station direct of Mercury the next day as we enter into the spring equinox. And then we have that kind of rundown of about 2.5-ish weeks of the post shadow period for this Mercury retrograde. But this is kind of that little seed where things start to shift and move. And I said this in the week ahead video for this week, is it feels like when a train starts to pick up speed, we're in that kind of moment where it's like chuck, 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 and slowly getting faster and faster. We're not going to be in the kind of full run until we get, into mid to late Aries season, but things are starting to pick up. And you know what? I, for one, am happy to hear it. All right, let's see what shall be brought forth with the cards. Oh, and I didn't finish my thought on this, but we still have 2 more eclipses. They're both full moon eclipses. 2 more eclipses on this axis. They're just not while the nodes are in Virgo and Pisces. We will not be fully out of this nodal cycle until winter of 2027. And then the next eclipse season is 3 eclipses, 2 of which are Saturn eclipses. So, out of the frying pan into the fire. But just know that this is kind of also a slow wind down to the Virgo Pisces nodal axis. And we're headed into, especially once the summer comes, into the Aquarius Leo axis that never gets a full axis by itself. It has to share the whole time, which unfair. All right. Gotta love it when I'm Reggie. No. Hey, gotta love it when I'm excited for a lunation and the cards are like, maybe hold your horses. So, starting off, we have the Five of Wands. Not a huge shock. We will be experiencing a Jupiter-Venus square that day. We will also, the wind down of one. And also the next day, Saturn stations. And so in this moment, there is tension and friction. Like I said, it's also a goodbye to, our kind of eclipse energy and cycle. And so, people we haven't fully resolved things yet very likely will pop up around this time, especially with that station. So recognize that there will be, resistance, petty arguments, people not agreeing. We do have Judgment next, which the arguments are small, but they are symptoms of something deeper and probably seem unrelated, but are also somehow connected. When someone's like picking a fight because they're upset about something completely different than the fight, that kind of energy. We also have this card of Judgment talking about deeper themes. This also very much refers to past life connections and kind of the consequences of our actions, whether in this lifetime or in other lifetimes. This is also very eclipse themed. Eclipses have a lot to say about past lives and moving through those things. And so this is a reminder that we are still processing that eclipse energy. People are going to be coming back up who we have not finished our connection with. And here's the deal, there's a lot of people who will never get to fully finish our karmic connection because we're going to have to carry it into another lifetime. However, we can put a pin in it and be like, hey, for this lifetime, I think we're done. For this lifetime, unless the universe super intervenes, I don't think we're going to be progressing very much. And so, this is a moment to Reggie. No. That's my Pisces baby. It's his birthday because I'm recording this on the 10th. So happy birthday, Reggie. He's the birthday boy. He can be a bit loud today. So this is also a time to process these things. Before your manifestation rituals, it might be a good idea to do a cord cutting or an unbinding or a releasing spell. and then using those manifestations as something to fill the space that you've just created. My kind of way of working with magic is like, if you're going to remove something, you probably should call in something after it so that that void and that vacuum is not left unfilled for something else to just pop in and fill. So yeah, it's going to feel like a lot. We also have the Ten of Swords. It's very much giving the vibe of this new moon is going to kind of feel like a full moon. And yes, I did say all these nice things earlier, and I still mean it. But these cards are a reminder that certain stages of progress are hard. Certain stages of progress require sacrifice and require us to do a large burden of energetic work. And it feels like that is the moment here where we are having to put in some elbow grease to move things along, to release, to allow ourselves to let go of stuff. It does feel like, especially with this card, there are some things we're still holding on to that we may not be able to fully release until Mercury is kind of well on its way direct. So don't be too hard on yourself if you feel these connections. Set the intention and the desire of release. You may not feel that right away when you do the spell, but you will feel it over the next 2 weeks as we head towards that quite lovely, in spite of the Jupiter square, full moon in Libra. So, recognize that the feelings around this moment, even though the outcome is positive, are going to be complicated. And then we have the Seven of Pentacles. Yes, we are still in the process of working through things. This is also just a reminder that, for better or for worse, a lot of stuff is not clearing until end of 2027, to be honest. And so don't beat yourself up over the progress of time. Don't beat yourself up over the fact that we're still very much in the planting phases for a lot of stuff. It really does feel like at this point, the things that we're kind of trying to call in immediately are like holding us over until we can get through this massive transition. It's also an important reminder that, even though it's been a hot minute, Pluto hasn't really been in Aquarius that long. And so we're still experiencing the opening and the unfolding of this really big moment of death and rebirth. And so while it can feel hopeless, it's nice to know that, like, it's not because we're lagging. It's because things are hard. And we're involved in some really difficult transits right now. And like I said, I think I said this in the Week Ahead video. I've also said this elsewhere, but like, probably the best or better astrology is kind of right before the eclipses starting up again. So looking at Taurus season, Gemini season, and most of Cancer season as kind of the more benefic times this year. So we're slowly building into progress. We're not quite there yet. We do have this lovely Father of Pentacles, which I adore, and the Sun, and the Wheel of Fortune, which I think this is the hope in our reading. In a moment that will feel a bit overwhelming, we are building strength. We are building resilience. I really think that a lot of us are finally getting to the point where, as much as you can know what you want, you do know what you want. And this is a reminder to stick to those guns. Just because things aren't moving doesn't mean your desires are wrong. Doesn't mean the process is wrong. Doesn't mean, why is my throat so? Try to clear that post-nasal stuff. I think I have. This is becoming a problem. I have to drink more water. I don't often do this, I also saged. Not white sage, kitchen sage. I will get it from the store and I'll dry it. I also saged in here, and I don't usually, and I do think I'm having a allergic reaction. There's a reason I don't use smoke cleansing a lot. I often use sound cleansing. Anyways, back to what we were doing. But don't give up on your dreams simply because they aren't coming to fruition yet. We have been building stamina in order to have the strength to be a container to hold those dreams. We also have the Sun. We are coming home to ourselves. We are coming into our own personal power, shining more brightly. This is also a reminder that the spring equinox is right on the other side. This is when the season changes over. Yes, we probably have some unlovely weather, even with spring here, because that's how it works. And also Neptune is in Aries. But we are kind of starting to ramp up our glow and our shine, and we're coming closer and closer to who we are meant to be, as we will every single time we tick over into a new zodiacal year until our lives are ended in this plane. So there is hope. It is just hope within the context of our labor, within the context of our life, of our existence within past lives, of our dreams. This is also the Wheel of Fortune, which is the card of the year. Anything can happen. Anything can become new. Anything can be reborn. Also, I'm reminded that the Wheel of Fortune is very much what goes around comes around. So, the energy you are putting out in the world will come back to you eventually. Just may take a little time. And because the cards feel a bit generous today, we have this, which very much feels like the energy that we're going to get as we move through this season, as we say goodbye to this old year. We have the Daughter of Wands. It can be easy, especially when stuff really doesn't feel like it's panning out, to be doom and gloom, to associate our adulthood with drudgery. And that is all very true. I'm not going to deny that. But, to have a fresh perspective. Never burning sage again before I do a recording. And I should have had water, but it's okay. I just forget to drink sometimes. It's the joy of being autistic. Looking at things with fresh eyes this spring, looking at things as possibilities and as desires and as opportunities. I, especially as a Taurus, can sometimes get a little crusty because I want to see everything as a long-term investment. And when it doesn't last for a long time, I'm like, so it's a failure. And it's not. It served a purpose. Maybe it didn't serve the purpose I wanted it to. And so approaching things with a bit of a lighter touch as we enter this new moon, as we recognize the things that we are struggling with and the grief that we're handling and the pain that we've been existing in, and being like, you know what? It's fine. I might feel better tomorrow about this. We also have the Nine of Pentacles and the Empress. Your hard work is going to pay off. I think it's going to be a little less visible in this new moon because we're kind of just starting to touch some better astrology, but continue to invest in yourself, continue to invest in your care, in your long-term plans. It may feel a bit hopeless right now, but it's not. We will find a way forward, and the stuff that we want, we deserve to have. And so, use this new moon as a moment to affirm that. No, I don't think this new moon is just going to suddenly, at least for some of us, beam down the things we desperately need. But I do think it is going to be the beginning of us gaining traction, of us starting to pull in more abundance, of starting to align more with people that we align with. This eclipse was such a purge of past dynamics and things that we have outgrown. If you can release the dead growth, the dead underbrush, if you can let it go, this new moon is an amazing opportunity to call in those things as we move into the new zodiac year. And it is going to unfold throughout the zodiac year until we hit the next new moon in Pisces, next Pisces season. So that is my reading. I think it's going to be a complicated one, per usual, but I do think that there is hope here and that there is a possibility of finding new ways to negotiate the world that we live in. Very Uranus sextile this moment. Anyways, my loves, I wish you a blessed new moon in Pisces, and I do hope that, while I know we're not going to get everything, that Jupiter moment really kind of sprinkles in something fun, gives us hope, gives us something to keep fighting for, to keep pushing for, as we survive in 2026. All right. Well, I hope you all have a blessed Pisces new moon. And also, please like and subscribe. You can also book a reading with me. You can, send me a message on my website or on IG, and we can get it booked up there. Anyways,